All right, we're talking money today, but money in a weird way. When nutrition comes at play. Ooh, what is this? Yes, so we're talking nutrition versus your income. Is there any correlation? Does one affect the other? And I do have a guest speaker, so let's get into it. Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Alice, and you're watching on LeLifestyle. And this week we have a special guest. No, it's not the Armenian business ladies, but we're talking money today. And we're talking money in a different way where your nutrition might be an influence on your income. And you're like, how? Well, we have a guest speaker. Her name's Maria Tanielian. She's a registered dietitian, and she'll explain what that means. Hi, Maria.
Hi. Well, first, thank you for thinking of me for this. I'm really excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you because this is a strange topic, and I don't think everyone knows how much nutrition influences their everyday.
Oh, and actually, this is something that we'll kind of get into in a bit, but the link between nutrition and money and income and stuff like that, people tend to think of it as a very direct and simple correlation, whereas it's not as easy and as simple as we might think.
Yes.
And so it's not necessarily my expertise per se, but it is something that I do have some personal experience in terms of experience in internships and school wise. So I'm really happy to talk about it with you today.
Yeah, we're so excited to get into this with you. But first, guys, we talk about money here. We talk about mindset. We talk about book reviews. So if these are the topics you like and want to hear about, click the like button below, subscribe, and so if you like all these topics, make sure to like and subscribe because we post videos every Wednesday. All right, we got our coffees. Yeah, and we're ready to go. Now, before we get into all this juiciness, tell us a bit more about you. What's your background? What does it mean to be a registered dietitian?
Yeah, definitely. So I went to university and I studied nutrition at Université de Montreal. I'm currently a registered dietitian licensed with the Ordre Professionnel des Diététistes du Québec, or the OPDQ, as of December of 2019. Yeah, so it's something that I absolutely adore doing, and it's not a field that I stumbled onto easily. It wasn't my first or even second choice. I was initially aiming for a different medical field, and I didn't get into it because I didn't have the R score in CEGEP. But then I stumbled onto nutrition, and I haven't looked back. It was really like that light bulb moment that people describe, and I just could not imagine doing anything else. So a lot of what I do now, I work for a private enterprise in a gym setting. So what I do a lot is a lot of one-on-one consultations with people of so many different backgrounds. I would say in the past year, because of the large list of people that the clients, no, because of the large list of clients that the enterprise has to offer, I've seen over 100 people. And what I love is that I would say 95% of the people that I've seen as clients have different approaches that they need and different game plans that they need. So it's very non one size fits all. And I think that's like really fascinating, and it just like endlessly entertaining per se, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meeting different people not every single day, but like throughout your year and seeing how they approach some things and what kind of mindset they're in. It's kind of fascinating. And you're like, wow, different backgrounds, different upbringings really, really influence someone's mind and their everyday life. So, do you think a person's mindset directly impacts their eating habits?
Oh, absolutely. I think that our words hold a lot of power. So each of us also has that ego that doesn't like to be proven wrong. So whether we like to admit it or not, it's just like it's human nature. It's okay. So what we tell ourselves will more likely than not become our reality. So some things that I find helpful in this situation could be first to be aware of what we're doing. So if, for example, the person who comes to mind is someone, let's say, who is struggling with like a restrict and binge eating cycle, who doesn't necessarily who doesn't necessarily have a diagnosis for an eating disorder as of yet, but is just kind of like struggling with disordered eating, whose binge eating is triggered by stressful situations such as stuff at work or interrelationship stuff. So if she's having or they're having a difficult day at work and they tell themselves, okay, well, I'm probably going to go home and I'm going to binge tonight. Well, more likely than not, then that is going to be the reality. They're going to go home, they're going to eat their emotions, and they're going to binge eat because that's what they told themselves that they would do. So our words do hold a lot of power. So what I would offer here would be to first be aware of what we're doing, the cycle that we're in, to be careful with the words that we use to describe ourselves. And another thing would be to use the past tense when it comes to describing some of our unhelpful or even borderline harmful habits. So for the example that I gave, the person would say, oh, instead of I'm going to go binge tonight, I would say, I used to be someone, or I used to binge when I had a hard day at work, but instead I'll do this. So that being said, our words hold a tremendous amount of power and it's often underestimated.
So that's exactly what I was going to ask. And do most people see or know this consciously, or most of the habits that we have with our eating habits, basically with our nutrition, are they mainly unconscious habits, the things that we do unconsciously?
Oh, this is like so it is something that it's nature versus nurture as well. So some people tend to be a lot harder on themselves just because of the way that they were taught growing up, that they need to seek external validation and be hard on themselves to prove their worth. So no matter if it's conscious or subconscious, I think the first step to actually getting out or like healing ourselves or to drive any sort of change would be to consciousness, awareness of what's happening, and then that way we'll be able to proceed to whatever it is we need to do.
I guess just to get into this a little bit deeper before we move on, how do you not expect, but what kind of advice would you give to someone who has those eating habits and they're not really aware or mindful when that's happening? What kind of advice would you give them to kind of start, I don't know if it's has something to do with having an open mind, or when it comes to trying to pinpoint what the problems are in our day-to-day tasks. But what kind of advice would you give to that person who is looking to have a change, but they're not really doing these things on a conscious level? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. So the person that you just described is someone who is ready for change, but they just don't know where to start, correct? Okay. So honestly, the best advice that I would give would be to work alongside a professional who shares values with you and who kind of has the same end goal in mind. Because as much as, say, a third person perspective from a family member or a friend would be helpful in a lot of cases, they don't hold their point of view isn't very objective. Whereas if it's a professional who's actually trained to look at everything through a third person point of view lens, but also the bigger picture, they'll be able to make you think about your eating habits and whatever habit it is that you want to improve on, change, decrease, increase, whatever. So I would really recommend, whether if it's in nutrition, a registered dietitian, or if you're seeking something from a psychologist or a therapist, I'm very pro working with like a healthcare professional to drive any sort of change if you're ready to do so, of course.
Yes. So I think the key term here is if you're ready, or if you are aware that something's wrong. So how does one actually come to that realization that, they're off the track, they're not, working towards, I guess, success in some terms, or they kind of have a feeling that their habits are not serving them?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I like that term, serving them. That's a really good one. I think that that's one of the words that are more helpful to use instead of like good or bad. But this is actually like a two-part question, so I'll give you a two-part answer for it. So we live in an era where like internet has basically taken over everything, and it is a fantastic tool that provides us with so much useful knowledge in a very accessible way. But this does become a double-edged sword because anyone can say anything on the internet, right? Whether it is safe or personalized or even legal sometimes. So it comes to figuring out if nutrition advice can, if so, blah, blah, blah. So what was I saying? So when it comes to figuring out if like the nutrition advice that you're reading, for example, on the internet can be harmful to you or not, or it can be useful or not, we've unfortunately reached the point where it's become the responsibility of the patient, the client, or the receiver of care to do research on the background of the person offering the advice. So are they a medical professional? Do they have an active license and not just a license that hasn't been renewed in years, or a revoked license? That's even worse. Are they tied to a board that has rules for code of conduct or proper ethics that they have in place to ensure the patient's and the client's safety? So that's something that is very important and a little bit unfortunate, that needs to be done before evaluating whether advice that you receive can be harmful or useful or helpful. But in terms of how to realize if you're on the right track, I would say you know you best. This is something that I often work on with my clients as well. So shifting their focus from what they feel like they should be doing, so what they should be eating, the habits that they should be doing, they should be having, to trusting their body to tell them what it is that they need and what it is that they will feel most helpful to them at that point in time, because those needs change over time as well. So if you feel off, your feelings, your symptoms, your pain is completely valid. And it kind of like I mentioned earlier, it all comes down to finding the right practitioner with whom your values are in line and who will give you safe advice, ideally backed by science and not just personal experience.
Or I don't know, online blogs.
Online blogs, but I mean, not to say there's a lot of nuance to be made here, right? Because there's a lot of blogs that are actually run by medical professionals who have an active
Yeah,
license. And the reasons why I say active license is, for example, I'll give the example of myself. If I were to be sued for medical malpractice in a hospital field, for example, or for any sort of malpractice by offering advice that has harmed one of my clients or patients, I could be sued for a lot of money, but also they can take my license away from me. So I have a lot to lose. Like my profession is at stake. Whereas someone who just shares personal experience, as long as it's not used to give advice, like it's just sharing personal experience, because that's completely valid as well, they don't have much to lose in that sense. You know what I mean? So that's why the license here comes very strongly and very importantly.
Hope everyone noted that. So maybe I'm about to ask like an impossible question right now, but what is the optimal or ideal state of mind that someone needs to have optimal nutritional health?
Oh, okay. This is indeed a very hard question. But I think before really diving into the answer, the word ideal and optimal I find is a little bit unhelpful sometimes, just because it gives the impression that ideal or perfection exists, which insinuates that there is a good or bad way of doing things or a right or wrong way to do things, which is very black and white thinking. This, what it does, it attaches a moral value to our thoughts, our actions, our habits. So I am a good person, I am a bad person, I am right, I am wrong, and all these things that can trigger feelings of shame. And the studies surrounding shame actually conclude time and time again that it's not an effective tool to drive any sort of positive change. So if you're looking to improve anything, in any sort of field, whether it's nutrition, your just general life habits in terms of mental health or physical health, anything. We start by recommending to try not to aim for perfection because it doesn't really exist, right? But otherwise, the best mindset to be in, I think, would be a mindset that motivates you to create those sustainable habits while making progress if you feel that that's what you need. With daily actions that actually nourish your mind, your body, and your soul. So in a culture that makes us feel that we're never good enough, or like the culture of not good enough, no matter what it is that we do, telling ourselves that our progress and our efforts, no matter how slow, no matter how small, is good enough, I think that's a really healthy and strong mindset to have.
Yes. Oh my God.
Of
Yes.
course.
That's like very well said, because
Thank
a lot
you.
of people go towards this ideal thing that they've created themselves in their own mind, because there's no ideal. It's all made up in our minds. It's all part
Yeah.
of our imagination. So to be able to break from that and then work on yourself at the same time, you'll be able to kind of, I guess, heal yourself, because it's kind of, that's what you're doing. Even though we don't want to admit that we're hurting or
Stigma. It's
yeah.
okay to be healing and working on ourselves, but also not to say that it's not healthy or helpful or useful to imagine an ideal version of ourselves in the future. But I think the more harmful thing here is setting unrealistic expectations. Like if we're talking about money here, I want to make I want to have $1 million in my bank account. That's my goal, let's say. Or I want to run a marathon. I want to eat salads every single day. But if I don't know how to cut vegetables, if I don't have a grocery store near me, if I've never run a mile in my life, if I'm starting with like no investments and nothing to start off in my bank account, and I have a part-time minimum wage job, then it's not realistic to expect to reach that goal like tomorrow, right? So not to say that you can't have
Yes.
those ideals and things that you're working towards, but the expectation that we have that of control, that's what's the most unhelpful. The feeling that we need to be a certain way by a certain time or a certain age, or that even if I run 5 kilometers today, it's not good enough because it's not close to the marathon that I'm running. That's the unhelpful thing here. Not to say that we don't need aspirations or goals that we want to work
Yeah,
towards.
of
It's
course.
just the need to control how we're
Yeah.
perceived and um, how much what we should be doing. We should ourselves.
Yeah, the should term. And I think 99% of the people watching have gone through this either earlier on or are still going through some of this, where they're trying to control parts of their lives in a negative way. Maybe sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious, but it's a work in progress for all of us, and there's no shame in that as
Definitely.
well. So have you noticed any correlation between someone's eating habits and how it kind of transcends into their income?
This is also a really good question, because when it comes to eating habits and income, it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's kind of like a chicken and egg question. So people who don't have a steady income or who have a low income, do they make unhelpful or unhealthy nutrition choices, or do they make unhealthy nutrition choices and therefore their mindset is a little bit unsteady and unstable? It's just like a lot of
Oh,
moving parts.
tricky.
There's a lot of moving parts, and I honestly don't have as much public health nutrition experience as some of my peers. So I do acknowledge my limitations in answering this question. However, there are many public health studies that link a person's eating habits to their income, but maybe not in the way that we think. So we sometimes tend blame someone's eating habits on 100% personal choice. But it's really not that easy for many who aren't as privileged as myself, for example, because that's what it is. Being able to choose healthy foods on a daily basis is a privilege that we really should definitely recognize and not take for granted. So some of the stuff that I've read about, and I will ask Alice to link some of these studies below. So household food insecurity is a serious public health concern for a lot of high income countries, even a lot of comfortable countries like the US and Canada. And there's still such a stigma around seeking help in general, but also seeking help for food insecurity. Food deserts, for example, as well, have also been a matter of concern for researchers for 20 plus years, even seemingly so in comfortable countries. So by food deserts,
what are food deserts?
yeah, so food deserts is, for example, it's more of a geographical term. So if I were to be living in a food desert, and there are certain ways to characterize it in a more specific way. So if someone lives like the closest grocery store is 5 kilometers away. I live in financial insecurity. I don't have a car to get to that grocery store, for example. Or the closest food source would be, for example, a dollar store or a dépanneur, and that's just like really what I need, what I have accessible to me. So it's just like not having access to whole foods and nutritious foods as much as other geographical locations in the country or the city that I live in. So this is something that's been studied for 20 plus years. And so someone's food choices don't necessarily always boil down to personal choice on how they spend their income, though financial literacy can also have a role in this. But their environment and literacy in general, among others, plays a huge role as well. So the correlation isn't necessarily as direct and simple as we want it to be.
So there are different factors that always come into play, whether you were born in a certain area or even how you were brought up to think about certain aspects. Yeah, like they kind of come into play. Even like for example, in Armenian households, there's a lot of stigma with how much you should eat, whether you're a female or male. Both are different approaches. How much they force onto us to eat in that terms, and then there's also a different approach when they say the men in the family are the breadwinners and the women are the caretakers. So all of that mixed, depending on how you were brought up and depending on where you were, kind of, you're saying that everything comes into play. So it's very hard to specifically say for everyone, if you did this, then you're set.
Mm-hmm. It's very layered. It's very layered. So in the example that you described, there's nutrition, sure, but there's cultural issues, there's differences in sexes and genders, there's feminism issues, there's race issues as well, because there's in Armenian mentality, there's a lot of description, but there's a distinction, sorry, between us and others. So there's a race issue there. There's so many things that go into it. The onion is very layered, I guess we can say it that way. But again, it's not something that's very easy to identify either. It's important to mention as well, though, that the way that we're brought up, yes, it contributes to it, but it shouldn't stand in the way of gaining awareness in ourselves. So I'm aware that the way that I was brought up caused me to think or act a certain way, but I shouldn't hold it as an excuse to not be aware of myself and to not needing change in my life or improvement in my life. And needing change and improvement, it's in itself an action that can cause a lot of shame, because it makes us feel that we're leaving our family behind and that we are somehow better than the people who brought us up. So it's very layered in terms of psychology as well. It's very hard to say. It's very hard to say.
Yes, and like personally speaking, and I'm sure other people can relate to this, like this is something we work on and go through daily. Like all the struggles and like all the decisions we make daily come from, this onion that's so deep and layered. So how do we even start to think about change, or better yet, because thinking about the change first is very internal, and you can't just like expect someone to start thinking about, changing their ways and habits out of the blue. Something needs to happen for them to be like, okay, I need to change this because it's not serving me anymore. Income takes a very long time to fix, let's say, if it's, fix is the wrong word, but we understand. But nutrition, whenever we think about our nutrition, we want it to be done now, right? We want to lose our weight now. We want to be eating healthy now. So how can we start working towards that? What do you recommend as a registered dietitian for people to do? I know it's definitely different for every single person, but is there like a general advice?
Though where you need to be to actually begin is ready to change or ready to put in efforts. Because there's a lot of instances, like in my experience, where, for example, a patient is referred to the nutrition clinic by a practitioner, a doctor, or whatever. A doctor, not whatever, like nobody else can refer, by a doctor. And I asked them, so what brings you in today? And they said, well, I don't know. My doctor said I should be here. My wife says I should probably do something about it, but I don't really feel that I need to change something. So in that example, this person is clearly not ready to change. So I can offer them all the resources, all the advice, all the things. But if you're not ready to take that first step with a practitioner, then that's something that I can't unfortunately help you with. I can help explore the motivations behind it. I can explore where you see yourself in 5 years to kind of create and instigate that motivation and plant seeds. However, if you feel that you're kind of comfortable where you are, you can't change someone to do what you want them to do. That's ultimately like psychology 101. That don't quote me on that. I'm not a psych major, but so the first thing would be to be sure that you're ready to take that next step, but also see if you feel any shame towards, I guess, changing or improving, because that like reaching out does cause a lot of shame for a lot of people because it is still so stigmatized. So reach out. If you live in food insecurity, for example, which is a topic that we discussed thoroughly earlier, more so on my end, but there's already a lot of initiatives in the city of Montreal where we live, for example, or Laval even, to help out those living with food insecurity, such as community kitchens, community grocery stores, food banks, restaurants, and other businesses that employ those with limited education and job experience to get them ready to go back onto the job market. So these are things that help in terms of nutrition, yes, but also in terms of income and potential job experience. So for example, in the city of Montreal, there's the CACI, Corbeil, Bordeaux, Cartierville, more so in the northern region of the city, Maison Parents des Jeunes et Maison des Jeunes, sorry, of Bordeaux, Cartierville, which is also in the northern region. So don't be afraid to reach out. So being able to, it's easier to say, it's easier said than done. Just like face your shame and just like ignore your shame. That's completely a process in itself. So building shame resilience, which is the second step, would be an entire process in itself. So I am not really sure how to answer this question other than that. I know that there's a lot of things that exist. I know that you need to be in the mindset and the readiness, have that readiness to change, and just take that step to reach out to a practitioner, whether it's a psychologist, a registered dietitian, a doctor, or just community nonprofits that offer like these services that can actually be of incredible help.
You actually took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, like, the bottom line comes down to your mindset. your mindset and how open-minded you are and how ready you are to learn about new ways, or go about your day-to-day in a different state of mind, will eventually influence what kind of work you do, how you show up every single day, and basically how you treat your own body.
Mm-hmm.
Food wise, of course, in this sense.
Yeah, and what I've come to notice is that it actually takes a lot of courage to reach out to a practitioner. So
Yeah.
take that. I encourage everyone to take that step. So
Yeah.
I mentioned a lot about people who living in food insecurity, but for those, for example, like yourself and myself, who aren't luckily living in food insecurity, who have that privilege, some advice that I would offer to people like us would be to be aware of what's happening outside of our own bubble. So I have sent Alice quite a few research papers that you can read. I will also send you some resources like the Cassie and the Colbe and stuff like that that could be helpful. So just be aware of what's happening outside of your bubble, and help raise awareness as well. I know there's a lot to raise awareness of in today's in nowadays. There's a lot of injustices happening, but food insecurity, in my opinion, should not be one of them. Everyone deserves, it's a human nutrition, human basic nutritious meals should be a human right, and unfortunately it's still not. So helping raise awareness and breaking the stigma that it's okay to need help, and to get help, and also volunteering and donating to some of the organizations that I will ask her to list below the videos.
Yeah, it'll be in the description box. Also, like for us Armenians, for example, asking for help from someone outside of our family or relatives is like a huge taboo for some reason still today. Reaching out to therapists, nutritionists, dietitians, physical trainers, personal coaches, all these people that are there to help you go from this point that's very low technically to a higher place in your life. For some reason we're told that it's a bad thing, and I come firsthand where most of the time I'm questioned, why are you going to see this person, why are you going to see that person? Well, I clearly don't have the knowledge or the same understanding they do to be able to help myself, so I need their recommendations or their ways to show me that, hey, these are the steps that you're taking and you're not realizing that they're harming you. So you need that like external person looking into your life and pinpointing like, okay, this is where your issues are coming from, and they'll help you. So yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do, right? Where that's my job, just to like help people. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. And coming back to the Armenian community and like the shame, I gave away the answer. But if you dig deep onto why we think that it's wrong or so taboo to seek external help, it's not that below the surface. If you just scratch a little bit, what lies underneath is shame. The shame that if we do seek help, it means that we're not good enough. It means that we are incapable, and it's shame is valid. It's completely valid, but d'où l'importance. That's why it's so important to firstly be aware of why I'm acting this way, but also to develop shame resilience to be able to seek help and take that next step and move forward and have that ideal version of myself in my head that I'm striving towards, without putting too much pressure on myself. So all these things, like the puzzle pieces, are like finally coming together here.
Yes. And it's not only in the Armenian community. I believe even like most of the Middle Eastern countries and many other places, or just any family, honestly, who has that kind of mindset. Mm-hmm. So to get into the helping portion, what are some practices that you'd recommend someone to work on for mindfulness or to get in touch with themselves, to be able to understand their body more?
I think that mindfulness and getting in touch with our body's needs is it's one of the principles of intuitive eating. So I don't know if this is something that you've heard of, or if the people watching have heard of intuitive eating. It's become a trend, unfortunately.
Yeah. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it's unfortunately part of a trend now, but actually intuitive eating, it has 10 principles, but some of which are just to be in tune with our body signals, to reject diet culture and the whole you should be doing this. And the value that it brings is that you find peace within yourself and your body and food, and it just creates healthy and sustainable eating habits, and that's what studies have been showing as well. But again, kind of circling back to what I said earlier about being careful about what you read on the internet, because now it's been opted by diet culture and diet culture in itself is a completely different thing that I can talk about for hours and hours. However, but it's been opted by diet culture to be sold as a diet. And I don't want to call out any companies, but Noom is the company that's been using terms from intuitive eating for weight loss, and the goal of intuitive eating is not weight loss. It's not a diet. So that's maybe something that we can talk about at some point in time as well.
Yeah, let us know if you guys want us to discuss nutrition in itself and diet culture.
Yeah. So
it's another problem.
What it boils down to is work with a practitioner. Like you can do all the mindfulness exercises, and if you find that helpful, then all the power to you. But if you feel like you're missing that edge or that extra knowledge and the how-to of it all, it's always best to work with a practitioner who specializes in intuitive eating, because that's kind of what nutrition is as well. We do a lot of generalization, but there's also a lot of specializations in nutrition. So yeah, work with the practitioner.
Yes. So amazing. Love that whatever we've talked about so far. I think we went even deeper than we meant to go.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, I love it too. And so I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to get people to know you a little bit more. What's your everyday routine?
Like? Pre-COVID or post-COVID? Or during COVID?
Right now. Right now.
Right now, actually, I've been getting into a more stable morning routine per se. So I've been working evenings and nights more than the morning. So say I wake up in the morning, I've been waking up hungry every morning, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes breakfast is delayed. But so I get up, I make myself my cup of coffee. I've been going back into my skincare routine lately as well. So it's nothing extensive. It's just like a couple of steps.
So is Armenian owned brands?
I love The Ordinary. It's been working so well on my skin. I've been loving the Ole Henriksen vitamin C serum, the Truth serum. I find that it works better for my skin than, say, the Drunk Elephant one, which I've also tried. But hyaluronic acid, big fan. Big fan as well.
Noted.
So there's that. And I make myself my cup of coffee, and I've been reading a lot lately. So I probably chill with my dog and I read a good book. And then that's just how I start my day.
Any exercise?
Oh yeah, but not in the morning. Not in the morning. Because I find that for me, morning exercise kind of like kills the rest of my day, because I like to lift weights and my body's just like physically tired and I get mentally tired for the rest of the day. So for me, that just doesn't work. It's either afternoon or evening exercise that works best for me. Yeah.
Okay, so what are you reading? What kind of books do you like to read?
I've been reading a lot about nutrition, of course, but I kind of like alternate between nutrition and like personal development, things that can help personally and professionally as well. So that's the main
book you'll recommend.
Oh, I have a lot of recommendations actually. So, nutrition-wise, I recommend Body Kindness by Rebecca Scritchfield to all of my clients, and all of my friends, like any woman who is living on planet Earth should read this. It's so helpful. It's so nice. I also enjoyed Body Respect by Linda Bacon and Lucy Aframore. They're the ones who have built the pillars for intuitive eating, but it's more, I would say, a scientific approach. So it kind of decorticates like science and how it came from and how it came about and where it's going. And I think there are different volumes of Body Respect now.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. No, I'm not sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know if anyone noticed the titles of these books kind of show you like exactly how nutrition see the diet culture. It's talking about body kindness and body respect. So a very intuitive, very mindful approach versus do this to lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that those are things that those are values that I've adopted into my professional practice as well. So kindness, I always practice compassion. I always practice compassion in parallel with any intervention that I do with my clients. So I think those are really helpful books in terms of nutrition. I do have like general life books, like professional books.
General life books.
Yeah, general, because actually, no, there are also some, I said general life books, but like books that have helped me personally and professionally, because we did touch upon shame, the feeling of shame a lot during our discussion today. And the one that was a game changer for me is called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Brene Brown, so she's an author, but also she's a shame researcher. So it really offered so much perspective, and it offered how to build that shame resilience. And I think it's something that is very, very, very helpful. It was to me, but I think it could be helpful to others as well.
Yeah, of course. And we'll, like I said, the research that you've done, all those resources and the names of all these books, I'll mention it in the description below. Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us today and giving us all these amazing insights. I hope you guys at home got many golden nuggets. Please let us know in the comments what was your favorite takeaway. We really do appreciate hearing from you. Any final thoughts for today?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. This was so fun. I hope it was helpful to the people watching, truly. But I like to end some of the things that I do, like meetings and stuff. This is something that I've adopted through like my work culture, is the best, like nice quotes, but also like the best advice that we've received to kind of move us forward, which is a question that you sent me, but it kind of took me by surprise because this is like something that I've actually adopted into like most of my meetings. But anyway, so I would like to share that if you'll allow me.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually my favorite, it's a quote, but also it's kind of advice that I've received, not directly. It's actually taken back. It's a quote that was by Theodore Roosevelt, and it was taken back by Brene Brown in Daring Greatly. That's where it kind of like struck me the most. So it's you can Google it. It's the man in the arena. So what he says is that it's not the critic who counts. That's the main takeaway of the quote. So if it's not the critic who counts. So if you're in the arena with me, with blood, sweat, and tears, doing what you love to do, taking risks, being brave and being courageous, I will take your opinion and I will take your criticism. But if you're just in the stands, just talking and not really diving deep like I am, then I will not take your opinion. So this is something that has helped me overcome imposter syndrome a lot of times.
Yes.
So that's something that I would love to share. So it's not the critic who counts. That's my favorite quote.
Yeah, that kind of also, if you guys wanted to kind of break it down even more, that kind of correlates to when people say, reach out to the people who've done what you want to do and succeeded, get their advice versus asking someone's advice who hasn't done what you were trying to do.
Yeah, no, third party perspective is always helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That was amazing. I think it's like the best way to end this call. Let's repeat that. It's not the critic who counts.
If ever you want to just Google the man in the arena. It's endlessly inspiring, and it just like reminds you of who you are and what your values are, and just like to keep going.
Yes. So to wrap this up, Maria, where can we find you? Where can people reach out to you if they wanted to get to talk to you about nutrition?
I would have loved for this interview to be done when I actually eventually launch my my business, but I haven't done so yet. But there is a lot of projects in the works, in the
which we'll discuss
which
later
I will
on.
hopefully one day. There's no set date, or there's just like it's a lot of up in the air stuff, but it's something that I'm striving towards anyway. But right now I do have my personal account on Instagram that I will make public if ever you want to slide into my DMs. Not for weird things, please. But like for nutrition stuff, I'll be more, because I do post a lot of nutrition stuff on there as well. So my handle is Capin, CAPN_Maria. So I do post a lot of fun stuff about nutrition and my dog. So if you love dogs and nutrition, you can find me on there.
And then once she launches her business, we'll have her on Armenian Business Ladies to talk about more stuff.
Hopefully a year from now. We'll see. Don't put that in.
Yes.
Don't put that in.
I'm
My
going to hold you
employer can't see
accountable.
that.
I'm going to hold you accountable.
We're working.
This time next year, February 5th.
Who knows what COVID will bring, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Bye.
Bye.